There's an old adage, you only have one shot to get seeds planted correctly. But we have plenty of opportunity to go back into those fields and determine how well we did with that one critical planter pass. So this year when I went out to evaluate my planter performance, I brought a camera with me so I could share the things I'm looking for and identify the things that we might need to work on this winter on our planter. So this is my planting report card. To get an A+, I have to have a uniform, even emergence. That means once the first seed spikes through, the rest need to emerge within that 24, no longer than 48 hours. Everything after that just starts to rob yields and becomes a weed. So for me, uniform emergence is the key. And to get a uniform emergence, I need several things. First of all, a consistent seed bed, and for us, that's vertical tillage. And I need a bed without a lot of residue so I can absorb some heat consistently. And definitely get free of clods, and then of course, free of residue. A uniform planting depth is always a must. And to get that, we need a consistent downforce to keep weight on those gauge wheels in the planter, with proper contact on the double disc blades there in the front where they meet. And of course, a well-maintained parallel arm linkage. I spent a lifetime looking for evenly placed picket fence corn, so that is a must for us. And then a complete closing of the back seed trench. For us, a base of nitrogen and phosphorus to get those plants off and running to a really good start. So when I walk in a cornfield, these are the things I'm looking for. One of the biggest managed decisions we have in our farm is when to pull the trigger and start the planting. Thinking back to April this year, we definitely had some challenges. Early in April, before the week of the 18th, a lot of rain and some cooler temperatures. Then we got that week of the 25th, we had a lot of heat. And its impact on corn and beans planted on that April 22nd through the 27th was interesting to watch. The early planted beans, we had some tough stands. And we had to gauge those fields and go in there and look, say, do we need to replant? For me, it's 55,000 and less before I start to tear any beans up. While the prime time for planting corn is still in that 3rd and 4th week of April here in central Illinois, I'm no longer scared to wait for better conditions into May. This year, the corn planted in May consistently beat April planted corn for us. Let's go in and take a look. So we're in a cornfield here that was planted on May 10th, and so tremendous even emergence in this field. Planted at 36,000, and we're right at the V5, soon to be V6 stage. And so this plant is in a very critical time in its life. At the V5 is starting to select how many rows around. Is it going to be 18, 20, or if there's stress, then it's going to be less. Remember, every 2 rows we knock off is 10 bushel loss. So, but as I look at this field overall, I like the evenness. Probably the highest ear count in 2022 that we've had in the last 6 to 7 years. Every plant emerged at the same time, even if it was spiked down, didn't seem to hurt it. We had tremendous heat units, ideal moisture. In this case, this plant's talking to us. You can see the different roots, and so here we have a number 3 crown root, and we always say that they go out as far as the leaves go sideways. This root goes all the way down right to here, so it's over 15 inches away from the plant. And you can see where my screwdriver and my pocket knife are. We're banded on the planter, 3 inches on each side. We got 80 units of nitrogen and sulfur. And I'm really glad we got the sulfur in there because I can still pick up striping in this plant. But with that 80 units on here, and you can see we have lots and lots of feeder roots that are right in this area. So you can just see the roots are just going down. There's a massive amount of roots. You can expose this guy as he's heading down through the profile. And so these number 3s, there's 4 of each style crown root. 4 number 1s, 4 number 2s, and 4 number 3s. Soon to be coming out with the 4th set. But these guys are doing a serious amount of work keeping this plant with nutrients and moisture. So my first planter evaluation comes as I do initial stand counts. And it's critical for me to get an early read on the plant count. And I'm making a lot of early decisions about how many harvestable ears I can expect. And I'm counting viable plants and late emergers. If I've dropped 36,000, do I have 36,000? Or will it produce ears? And that would be an A++. If it's in that 35.5 to 34.5, yeah, maybe a slight of an A. Where I don't want to be is 3,000 to 4,000 plants behind, and that starts to get down in that D to D minus. And now that I have the emergence grade, I start to dig and to see where those late emergers came from. And it's easy to find the reason for late emergers. It just takes a spade and a good pocket knife. And most importantly, it takes some time. You have to walk the field and dig a few dozen late emergers that really uncover a pattern. Is it planting depth? Could it be seed chilling and saturated cold germ? Or is it too much residue? Let's find out. So we're taking a look here at the seedling depth. Did the planter put them all the same depth? And you just measure from the seed up to the crown itself and then add 3/4 of an inch. The planter was set at 1 3/4 inches. This plant was planted at 1 3/4 inches. When you look across the field itself and you see the uniform stand, the uniform height, you realize these seeds emerge at the same time and they're all planted at the same depth. So we look here at this late emerger and I can see when I stick the spade in extremely tight. So we're right here where the track of the planter and the tractor went. And we're going to pull him up here and just take a look at him and see what we got. You can see the stress at this mesocotyle. Look how the mesocotyle was trying to come out and how it was under stress. And this actually was curled. And so he's a late emerger because it took one loop and went around. You can see the crown itself, the compaction that it was under and how it actually come out. That's unique when you see a mesocotyle that's that long. Break it off here. And you can see the curl that was in it. It actually made one loop. So in this case, he won't have an ear. This guy here is just basically a weed. Residue buried in the seed trench is a common issue that leads to late emergers. And if I'm seeing the majority of my late emergers come from residue in the seed trench, I know where I need to improve my planter. Adjust those row cleaners. So when we talk about the row cleaner running correctly, we're looking here at the surface, and I really like what I see. It's the right depth. We got a tremendous amount of residue cleaned away, and we know that it worked because of the even emergence and the good plant stand that we have. But at the same time, we can take our knife and we can come down in here and we can look down in the root zone itself. And so as we come into here, and you can see, we dig this plant up. The seed was exactly at 1 3/4 inches. It just fell off here. Got it right here in my hand. It was mounted right here. So we have 1 inch mesocotyle plus 3/4 added for planting depth. I like the root structure I see. We'll dig up another plant here. Let's dig up another one. Then we're going to look at in the zone itself. Once again, you can see exactly here we got 1 inch to 7/8 of an inch of a mesocotyle. I really like the root structure on this one. Now we're just going to go in and we're just going to look. We're going to say, what kind of environment do we have underneath? And when I see this kind of soil structure, yes, there's some smaller amounts of fractured residue. But at the same time, as we take our plant counts, we know we're doing okay because of we don't have the misfires. And so when you drop 36,000 and you got that 35.5 to 36 on the stand counts in here, I'm really excited about what we have. And I can tell by looking at the stalk diameter that all these plants here evenly spaced and they all merged at the exact same time. We count on the row cleaner to pull that residue from the seed trench, but a clean trench really starts in the fall. We need to make sure that we process our corn stalks and make it easy for row cleaners to move that out of the seed trench area. So when you're out checking this year's corn stands, especially in a corn-on-corn field, it's always good to look at what happened last year at harvest. In this case, we had the 360 chain rolls on this 12-row folding head, and I get really excited when I see the results this spring. And so here we are, just the 1st of June, and you can look at the length. And the length is what really gets me excited. You can see that we've gotten length that I'm going to say is in that 6 to 7 inches. And no matter where I grab here, the length is exactly where we want it. But also look at the breakdown itself. And you can see where a chain roll was in, and it created all those inlets for the microbials. And Mike and his team, they're working overtime here. Here we are, we're having 80s for highs. And we just went through 3/4 of an inch of rain. You can still see the moisture here underneath the residue. It's good and damp. So you can tell the microbials are doing what they're exactly supposed to do. Well over $150 worth of value right here in my hands per acre going back into this crop. Where it usually takes 5 years, looks to me like we're going to be there in 2. We're not even to 1 year yet, and this here is in a really good spot. This year in central Illinois, we had a pretty friendly environment for closing the seed trench. When we're forced to plant a little wet, then the sun and the heat comes, the slot can start to open back up. And this year we had ideal moisture conditions and good success closing the trench. But it takes some digging to tell if we're really getting the job done. My favorite tool is a leaf blower. I can come in behind the planter and gently blow away all the loose soil. In most cases, you can always find the seed trench slot. Even in good soil conditions, I can always find a slot when a closing system that tries to pinch the slot closed from the top is used. That's why we developed a 360 wave. It closes the trench from the bottom up and completely destroying the seed trench slot and covering the seed with moist soil. Let's take a look. This particular field has 1034O and zinc starter on through the 360 wave. And I'm excited when I see as many roots as I see coming out here in this profile. Look at this root coming right out here, right to this side of the plant. So the planter is coming towards me. And as the planter's coming this way, that means on the right-hand side where the wave was is where? Let me pull the pocket knife out of there where Bandit was. Take a look at all these roots that are going right down through where the wave was. And so when you see this kind of root development here, so an inch over and a 1/4 inch below the seed, we have a Bandit starter, and it's doing exactly what we hoped it would do. 360 wave can improve closing on any planter, but it's also an ideal starter application tool. So when I'm out evaluating planter performance, I can also get a good look at how my starter's impacting root and plant development. Starter really has an effect, and so you can see the radicle coming right out of the seedling, and so you can see the hairs that are on it. And when we set the plant up right, and you think about a 1/4 inch below is where the wave deposit this starter fertilizer and the zinc, and you can see all the feeder roots, and that's exactly what we see here in the plant itself and the success that we've had. Take a look at the difference in the root structure in one of our test fields where we didn't use starter. And your first hint of that is if you look at this radicle, and yes, this radicle here planted on May 19th is almost what, 8 inches long? But look at the feeding, it's consistent all the way down as far as the little hair roots. You don't see that mass of happiness where it's in the starter zone itself. So this is your first indication that there is no starter in this field. We can also use this scouting trip to evaluate our on-planter nitrogen application program. Are the roots responding to our banding program? Concentrating nitrogen above the root zone to eliminate that ugly corn syndrome. We often see that once and done or the weed and feed nitrogen programs. And so we think about where we put nitrogen, and in this case, we talk about the Bandit. So here, where my pocket knife is, and over here where the screwdriver is at 6 inches, you can see we'd have the nitrogen. And you can see these roots. Look at this number 3 here. It's coming right down through the profile, and he's all the way out to here already. And so there's lots of number 1s and number 2s in here that are working hard, and they're getting done what needs to be done. And so I like the type of growth we have here. This plant in an extremely happy state. We should have really good ear count. You look at the roots that are going down through this profile. You can see I'm following one right here as it comes down. And so this plant is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing at this stage. I get a lot of pleasure out of walking my cornfields from V2 to V6. It's my first preview of how good or bad my harvest is really going to be. It tells me how much work I have to do on my planters this coming winter. And hopefully, it tells the work that I did to get ready for the planting season was really worth the time and expense. So, next spring, get out there and dig plants to see what you're doing right with your planter pass.